I'm here. I have this idea, and it seemed like it would be a good idea to present it as a fire talk. The whole goal is to, basically explain what my idea is, and then try to get some feedback in terms of how it could actually work. So just a quick question with what attracted you to come to this particular talk? Any volunteers?
The word disruptive.
Disruptive? Okay, cool, awesome.
Chaos movements for good.
Okay, all right, chaos, cool. Anyway, I should have spelled it with a K, like the old school chaos, but. Anyway, so my name is, just a quick intro here, my name's Grex, I'm on Twitter, this is me, this is where I'm from. I started out doing security back in the early 2000s, doing kind of web app testing. It was an awesome job, I loved it. Unfortunately, for career reasons, I had to move on. So I got into doing fun things like security engineering, creating mounds of documentation. That kind of led into doing FISMA, CNA type stuff for the government. Unfortunately, I had to go in and even got into doing props and things like that. So those are pretty insane if you've never worked on one. But the whole thing is I was producing tons of this, right? I mean, I felt that I really wasn't making an improvement in security. I was just creating mounds of paper. So there was all this cool shit that was going on back in the early to mid 2000s, and it was just frustrating that I was creating this, and all this cool stuff was going on. It made me want to do this. So I did this for a little bit. Right now, I'm in a pretty cool position where we bring in a lot of security COTS tools and really set them up and learn them. So at least I'm, getting at least a little bit away from the paper and more into doing some of the hands-on stuff, learning some of the different security tools out there. So I still produce some of this, but not as much, and it makes me want to drink this, the good stuff versus the cheap stuff. In the evenings, I like to do more hands-on stuff, so I just kind of play, I go to things like this, or go to meetups, and go to different hacker spaces and try to get some hands-on stuff, which I try to document them on this website that I run that is sort of like a Metro DC portal. It started out as being in Northern Virginia, so that's why the name started with Nova. We recently had a name change, so I just wanted to make it shorter. So anyway, so I'm a happy panda now. So that's a little bit about me. So the overview of the talk that we're going to be doing is we have, just look at maybe some foundation stuff, and then get into, what relate security to a life cycle in terms of business growth. Come up with, an experiment. What if we go against what everyone says we should do? What are the benefits associated with that? And then also looking at further research. So just some foundational stuff, and I'll reference this later in the presentation. I mean, I'm pretty sure you all know this, but you have, what is security, the CIA, confidentiality, integrity, availability, and then the other aspects that I usually refer to are the 3 A's, authentication, authorization, and audit. And there's a nice picture that sort of shows that in the Wikipedia article. So some other information in terms of forming a foundation. Years ago, there were these horror stories of people submitting bugs to security companies, and those companies turning around and suing folks. So it's nice that they've gone from that to more of a companies like Google and Facebook, where they actually offer you money to turn reports or turn vulnerabilities into them if you disclose it to them responsibly. Another idea that I thought was just cool as hell is I learned about this thing called chaos monkeys. Who's heard of it? Does anyone? No? All right. So chaos monkeys, it's a concept that Netflix came up where they have their whole cloud infrastructure serving movies, right? And so what they did to make it more resilient is they have these, these agents that basically go and just randomly shut down stuff, and so what that forced them, they designed the system so that the system as a whole, if a certain, like if this server just shuts down, the system's built to build around that. And so they have, it's open source now, actually. I think it's up on Google Code, but they have like 8 or 10 different agents, and it's basically these things that they take in some random information, and then they just go wreak havoc. And then the whole goal is to augment your network so that it can be resilient and work around all this chaos that's going on. So one thing that I wanted to touch on is, what is the life cycle? This is going back to, so there's some foundational stuff, and then what I want to do now is look at, hey, this is the life cycle of what a typical company does. I work for like a huge DoD contractor, but if you're just starting out in terms of just a small company, usually, as the graph says there, you're very agile, innovative. You take a lot more risk. You're more offensively trying to attack the market. But as you get more successful, you tend to pull back, and because you want to protect your success, right? Well, that puts you at an immediate disadvantage because you're more kind of in a defensive posture rather than an offensive posture. At some point, there's it does stable. I mean, so at your most successful point, as you start to protect your success more and more, you probably lose growth. And then the bigger you get, the more bureaucratic. This is the thing where, hey, I want the hammer, and you got to go through all these purchasing processes and workflows, and that hammer, if you added the workflow and everybody's time and everybody bidding on it, that's your like $50,000 hammer, and so it's kind of dumb, but the whole point of this is that is that you start out with this slope that just shoots up, but once you get to the successful point, you start to pull back, so your growth stagnates, and that's in terms of turning this back to, I guess, in InfoSec, you have risk, vulnerability, threats, impact. So your risk increases, and so in order to control that risk, you come up with these strict policies. So some of those policies, there's standard things like, just general corporate IT responsibilities. You have defined security groups that'll, push out patches and things like that. These policies just say that has to go on. But one of the policies is that there's usually a significant restriction on what users can and cannot do on that network. So the two things that come to mind, or at least with the company that I work out, is that you are not allowed to have hacking tools on your computer at all. Like and if you run like an Nmap scan, there's this myth that they can detect it like that, and they're gonna come and take your your computer out, and you'll go through some process of getting punished. So instead of like hacking all the things, these policies are kind of pushing folks to not hack all the things. So and this makes sense. I'm not necessarily against this. There's a compromise in there somewhere. So what I'm proposing is this experiment where we try to put less focus on the protection of our success. So you don't pull back. You stay more offensive. And one of the things that, at least from a security perspective, is trying to relax these very strict policies. So, hey, it's okay to have hacking tools. It's okay to, use Nmap to scan the intranet. Fine. Let employees, in this case, be the chaos monkeys. Yeah, servers may go down. Sensitive information may get, an employee who shouldn't have access to financial records might have access to financial records. But would you rather have your employees find that out? Or would you rather have a malicious person who hacks in and gets it, right? If your employees find that out, and we reward them by doing bug bounties and things like that, we actually, sort of like the Netflix chaos monkeys, we strengthen our system. We build it to be more resilient so that whenever the bad guys get in, they're not going to, all that low-hanging fruit is going to be gone.
Even if they are employees, why not basically just reward the bug bounties like independent researchers who happen to find something on their own?
Oh yeah, yep. Well, that's the thing. I mean, and I'm looking at this. They'll hire me to like be an SA, right? But I have some downtime. I'm curious, right? As most hackers are. So hey, well, let's try to hack or let's download a John and just try to hack the Unix admin hashes. And so following strict policy, like the average person couldn't do that. Or if you wanted to do it, you would have to, there's some huge process, and you got to get like all these approvals, and everybody's going to be like, screw it, let them be. I'm not going to tell them. But yeah, there's another question.
Yeah, well, what did you say about like external workers and stuff like that? Like external workers?
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing too. I mean, if you have an insider, one of the theories is, if you have the non-disgruntled workers find and report these problems, then the disgruntled worker will be very limited in what they can take. So now, of course, you have that theory where what if the person that's doing these escapades is a disgruntled worker? And I'm not saying this is perfect. I'm just saying it's let's flip our traditional ideals on their head. In the end, is there a chance that we could be more secure by not following the rules instead of following the rules? A few more slides here. So, and it's basically, I think talked through most of this. There are no rules, right? You could use basic or advanced hacking techniques. You could, scope it to a certain degree. And the thing too is the persistence. This is something that you can just do it whenever. So you could be Saturday night and you log and you VPN into your network just because you're curious, or you want to learn some new tool that came out. So you actually download this tool and run it on your corporate intranet to see what it finds. And being depending on the person, these could be targeted attacks, say for a particular department like finance, or it could be targets of opportunity too. What could happen? What do you all think? Do you think security would be better or worse?
It'd be better.
Bugs going to be found somewhere.
Yep. Or
You're going to find it. That's what open source was all about. I think Firefox and Google did it once, where they basically opened up to everybody so everybody can see the code, and then
yep.
cut down the loopholes pretty quickly because everybody was, you're going to have probably like 80% of them good,
Yeah.
20% bad, 80% close up.
Yeah, exactly.
The holes, and 20 can't do it.
And on top of that, Google offers like the big Chromium bounties.
Mm-hmm.
So there's basically incentive for the real
Yeah.
good developers to come in and say, okay, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. And they actually have incentive to go digging for it.
Yeah, exactly. But what if, theoretically, you could take a big DoD contractor and offer that too, out, at least in this case, since I was looking at it from a policy perspective, and the policy says, no, you can't hack. All right, well, what if we turn it on its head and say you can hack? What would happen? So, but the same thing, you still get the bug bounties, whether it's, $5, $500, or $1,000,
The question I have to ask though, was like a DoD contractor, for instance, how do you handle the fact that there's likely classified information on the network?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but what if there's classified information on the network? Like, is it worth it for that classified information to be discovered and then fixed? Or is it worth it to just let it sit there with the door being unlocked so that...
The question is, how would you handle the fact that the person finding the vulnerability might come across the classified information itself?
Yeah.
How do you handle like NDAs and things like that about information that's supposed to be secret?
Yeah, well, that's, really, you shouldn't have if you have classified, or first of all, you should not have classified information on your corporate unclassified network. And what it will show is, hey, there's a flaw there. We need to protect it. So instead of it being a huge spill, maybe one person found it, they closed it, versus everybody finding out.
And I'm guessing as people get higher and higher clearances, they have access to the various networks they're allowed to, and then they're looking on those networks.
Well, now, I'm not saying to, obviously, this is like, I'm not saying, in whatever network you're on, and just because your corporation says you can hack our intranet doesn't mean that, you can attack the customer's intranet. So there is, you can't just...
The main thing I'm worried about is like, in a classified setting, how would this...
Well, in the classified setting, you have a network. Say the whole thing's secret, right?
Yeah.
Everybody that's on that network should at least have a secret clearance, right? So kind of what I was looking at is, maybe, see the red is, I guess, the risk. So you have like corporate growth and then the blue line, and then you have red. So before, our risk basically stayed the same, but by, crowdsourcing security, discovering the bad things before the bad guys do, our attack surface decreases. And not only that, but from an availability perspective, our networks get more resilient and they're hardened. So you're actually decreasing your risk.
So this is kind of like hiring a pen test of a network.
Yeah, this is essentially, having a pen test come in and just say, hey, no rules, just pen test us, and whenever you find something wrong, let us know so we can fix it. Or have because employees, let them be like, hey, your job is, if you spend 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there to do a quick Nmap scan, or maybe you find something interesting, and then maybe there would be a way to request funding to, like, if it's a very advanced thing. Sort of what I'm proposing, you have your two extremes. So benefits kind of basically says employees become the chaos monkeys. You're forcing this resilient, self-healing network. Instead of saying, no, you can't, say, yes, you can, and actually pay people for it. And actually, in most cases, because you tell them you can do it, most people probably won't, because they want to do the stuff that they're not allowed to do, like my son. But these examples here just look at confidentiality, integrity, and availability. From a chaos monkey perspective, availability is big. Like, we have this production system, don't scan it, right? So, all right, if I scan it and the system falls, right? Well, that isn't my problem. Your system is kind of definitely needs more resiliency there. So I look at it as a good thing, so that whenever the bad guys do get in, they can't knock your network over. So as in anything, I'm sure, and by compromise, I don't mean you compromise the host. I'm saying you actually agree somewhere in the middle. So you have your free-for-all, which I described on the right-hand side, and then you have your traditional bureaucracy on the left-hand side. And so maybe someplace in the middle where people could go through like a vetting process where, in order to get access, in order to do this, maybe you fill out an app and there's some terms of service and, some legal things. But, so maybe there's some limitations, maybe there's not. But just anybody that wants to join it, have it be a pretty low bar, and hey, well, we're not paying you, but if you come across a new tool, or if you're interested in learning to hack, we'll give you a live network to actually do it on, and you're helping us, and we're helping you learn. But the big thing about this is, how do we prove this? And basically that's what the slide looks for. And I'm trying to get the word out, are there any existing examples of companies that already do this? How do we measure it? Like, how do you measure something, a network is more secure versus less secure? Looking for maybe smaller organizations that would want to volunteer, and maybe outliers. How do we deal with that? Like, what if the bad guy gets hired and becomes part of this program? What happens there? And then, so there's surveys, and I had just put together some quick questions on just demographics, policy, testing, overall. And I was thinking, like, all right, a survey is one way that you could prove something, but you're not really proving it. You're proving the way people think, not necessarily what's going on. But anyway, so this is my closing slide, which they say you should always have this slide, so I put it there. It's basically an exact repeat of the intro slide, but it's at the end. So anyway, if there are any questions, that's my Twitter, my website, it's how to contact me. You can also just do grex@novainfosec.com. That's my email. But anyway, that's it. Are there any questions? Yes.
About 5 slides back, you had that graph.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
If you notice, the delta between the growth and the risk is the highest in the end. Meaning the difference between risk continuously goes down and as you stabilize.
Yeah.
It just seems, although being part
Well,
of
this graphic wasn't like, I didn't pull this from a textbook or anything. This is me just drawing lines on, this is what I think would happen.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. I thought, I'm like, I've never seen that specific thing before. But
Yeah.
the reason why if that is true,
Yeah.
that's actually a disincentive, because the differential, you're getting the most bang for your buck. Right? If you're able to stabilize and your risk is continuously going down by doing essentially the same thing,
Yeah.
right? Or doing very piecemeal, not like a hybrid solution, which you're referring to a hybrid solution where like the Chaos Monkey is, it's almost a confined space, even though they're doing it on a live network.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, we have to know that the Chaos Monkey actually hit this.
Yeah.
Not like the Chaos Monkey just broke anything.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know, maybe the Chaos Monkey is roped into this particular area.
Yeah, exactly.
But it could be anything.
Well, I mean, yeah, well, in this case, the Chaos Monkey are your employees, and, you know, they may, as part of that agreement, I mean, although I would like to just have it be open-ended, because that's where I think you'd get the most benefit, but you could say, oh, you can only attack like this IP range or something.
But I'm just saying, like, if you're going to use that graph,
Yeah.
Because the differential is so big, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger from essentially doing the same.
Well, this, I mean, if this would continue on, I imagine you would get down to some minimum risk, but it would kind of curve. But
sure. But the problem is that essentially, I'm just like, because once you reach that stabilization point,
Yeah.
it means sit on it, because, essentially just do what you're doing, because, hey, risk is going to keep going down.
Well, I wouldn't say necessarily sit on it, because a corporation, they set up systems. It isn't like they set up systems and they turn it on and everything stays that way. I mean, new systems are constantly being added, code's being updated. So there's that risk. It essentially would stabilize, but there are points where it could, theoretically it could go up. And risk is a strange beast, because it's, how do you, there's these very high level, there's these mathematical models for calculating it, but everything's based on like estimates. So
It's qualitative, not quantitative.
Yeah. So yes.
That makes sense that the risk is going to drop some, because once you get stabilized in the policy or the company, people are sure what they should be doing, what they shouldn't be doing, how systems work, how security works. So things are going, the risk is going to drop, because now you have a set policy. When you're changing it,
Well, so are you but if that policy says you can't hack, right? Then essentially you're going to have this huge attack surface, right? Where if the policy says you can hack, then people would find those vulnerabilities and we could close them. So your attack surface would be less.
no, I mean definitely, I think allowing some hacking works, but I think what this kind of is more indicating is more like when just the generic structure of the company stabilizes, risk goes down. Because you're setting better than when you're starting out or when you're growing.
Yeah. Well, this is, and I had a hard time, and if anybody could help me a better way show this, because, risk, there's kind of like business risk, but then you have like security risk and then growth, because theoretically, depending on the company, I mean, growth could rise or fall or whatever, but yeah, I guess I wish there is a difference between business risk and security risk, and I think here, when I put this together, it was more of security risk. Although, but then I do realize that
But it is factual. It still is factual.
Yeah.
I think.
I'm sorry, but the way I look at the graph, it looks a little confusing, because, I mean, with the previous graph, it was basically the same thing.
Yeah.
It was showing that stabilized and then just straight line there,
Yeah.
because it was all stable.
So
The risk was also the same. So I would think there would be some sort of difference in the stabilized line if the risk was also going down. Because
For the growth or for the risk?
for the growth, because
Well, the growth is stable, right?
you're basically not doing the same thing, so wouldn't there be like,
Well, you're not growing.
Well, in this case, growth is, maybe, you could measure, revenue, profit, things like that. Or you could also look at it as employees. I mean, that's the thing, like, I had a hard time trying to create something, and I know this isn't perfect, but...
all right, I was just misinterpreting that.
Oh, no, well, it's a very confusing graph, I guess, because things aren't clearly defined, but... I know there are little intricacies that probably don't make sense, but at least in this case, to simplify it, I just sort of glossed over it, and I'm sure, because really there are different types of, different ways that you could measure growth, and so you could have a graph for like each one of those, or, so, but yeah, yep.
But it has nothing to do with the graph, but when you're talking about a free-for-all with your employees on the network,
Yeah.
would you vet their tools that they're using? Because someone who doesn't really know what they're doing goes and gets a script kiddie.
Yep.
We all know those come from legitimate sources and have no back doors into them.
Yeah.
And they may not be able to find something, but they may have just launched an opening.
Oh, what?
Some type of opening for an outside attacker to come in.
Yeah. This is true. I mean, that's another aspect to it. But then also that could be like a security test too. Maybe your SOC or whatever should be detecting that. So it's also not only hardening your network, but it's also keeping your security team practiced on their toes. So, and then maybe, I'm sure there's ways that I mentioned the compromise, not necessarily, and that's what would probably be the best option, somewhere in the middle, and maybe some of those rules are, if you're going to use a tool, you just have to let us know and where you downloaded it from.
If you can vet the tools and say, yeah, okay, that's a clean tool, we trust that
Yeah.
results, and instead of doing a free-for-all, saying, here's a block of ranges you can go test
Yeah.
at your free will,
Yeah.
let us know if you find something, because if you have going back to the business aspect of it, if you have a server that's making you $100,000 an hour, and you take it down for 3 hours because they're scanning it,
Yeah.
you're out of money.
Well, no, but that server should be built to be resilient enough.
But
And in the end, that makes,
in the end, it will make it more secure.
so that whenever the bad guy gets in and, he doesn't do something even worse,
I would think
that's going to take it down forever.
that's where I would think, on that aspect, if someone's going to test that server or try to compromise that server, you at least want to know about it, so if something does go down, you can get that back up as fast as possible.
Maybe
Fix that problem.
You need to, fix
Try to
it.
get it back up, because that's
Yeah, there are ways that, maybe there's some reporting mechanism where you keep a log or you say, oh, well, the fun that I'm going to have today is I'm going to download this tool, I'm going to run it and on, this IP block of range, and then you submit that, and then that's what you do. Or more likely it's going to be like, oh, well, over the next month, I'm going to run Nmap on our entire IP range and see what happens or something, or
Just hire people to be chaos monkeys for your company.
because that costs money, it's overhead.
employees do it.
So if you have curious, you're giving them a live network to basically learn on, right? So you're kind of crowdsourcing it. The paying a pen test team, you're paying it. There's a limited number. There's, most cases, at least the way they do pen testing now, that comes in, or the rules of engagements are very narrow. You can only test from like midnight to 3 in the morning. You can't hit these servers, and it's like, oh, well, that's nice, but a bad guy's not going to follow those rules. The bad guy's going to get in and fuck the system up.
But
Or hack, what is it? Hack all the things, whatever.
be able to keep your systems up and be able to find the vulnerabilities and patch them.
Yeah.
So just say, this
I'm sure
here and
obviously this is where we are,
Yes.
and there's this is kind of this utopia type thing that probably we'll never get to because corporations like to control their stuff. So maybe the solution is somewhere in the middle, and some of the ideas, maybe there are rules that could be put in place that could help mitigate huge risks like that.
The whole idea is using free resources that you have available. Using free resources you have available. You already have employees there. They're already curious.
Yep.
And you don't have to pay them to do it.
Yeah. So, obviously you would still have to meet and accomplish, you couldn't spend 4 hours a day. This is like, I'm going to work my 8 hours, and in the morning I spent 5 minutes and I kicked this Nmap scan off. I'm going to, at the end of the day when I work my 8 hours, I'm going to, go and look at the scan results or whatever. So, trust me, employees are not like working 100%. They're like, hey, I'm going to work an hour, then I'm going to go BS about the football game for an hour, then I'm going to go outside and have a smoke for 15 minutes.
If
you really want to have fun, bring programmers into the mix.
Yeah.
Couple hours of thinking about how to solve a problem, just chatting it up, and then, 15 minutes of coding, done.
Yeah, exactly.
Then again, that is kind of the workflow of programming in general. You don't want someone just hammering out.
Well, yeah. And I agree, because there's this mental, like, I'm trying to solve a problem. Like, I can't just stare at the computer screen for 8 hours. Mentally, you need to get away from it, let some fresh ideas flow in, and then you're more productive.
Yeah, but I would think from the programming perspective, that would be more out-of-the-box thinking instead of saying, here's someone in your HR group that, I've always wanted to play around with something, I'm going to go download this program. Whereas your programmers see the problem and think out of the box and try to break it, try to get into it.
Mm-hmm.
That would give you a better perspective of, okay,
Well,
because the bad guys aren't going to be using just the script kiddies. They're going to throw the chaff out for you to be running around with, looking at where they're coming in.
Nice and slow. They're going to be like, woo, and then you're going to go and.
Have different ideas than we have thought of.
Yeah. So anyway, but that's the whole. I'm sorry this was more than 15 minutes or 20 minutes, but I enjoyed the discussion. And if you have any suggestions for me in terms of that last slide, kind of the further research, how do we prove, or how can we at least show that I'm making an assumption that, hey, you do away with security policy and your network becomes more secure, like how do we prove that?
Bring in like the Chromium or the Ponium results from the vulnerabilities found during the Ponium, for example, and just start listing the results from these big bug bounty competitions.
Yeah.
If we start doing that, it's like, oh, well, if you put the bounty on it, people tend to be inclined to start looking for stuff, and they start finding this, this, and this.
Yeah.
So there
And then you could have, kind of like a leaderboard, like Facebook and Google do, where, this is the person that's like, made the most, and fun stuff like that. Anyway, it's just a thought. Did the gentleman in the back left, I saw you raise your hand.
Well, yeah, a bit.
A bit.
Little story. I don't know if you know about what's going on with Uber, the taxi cab company.
Yeah, well, there's a big, like a loss, like they're trying to get it so that you can't.
Well, specifically talk about the thing with New York City taxi.
Yeah, with the
It's almost the same problem. It's the compromise there. They're pushing the idea that they can change everything.
Yeah.
immediately.
Yep.
While actually having, having registered taxi cabs in the city.
Yeah.
Basically, they just want anyone to go out there and be a taxi provider.
Yeah.
Where there have been instances in the past where that's been very dangerous.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it has worked in other places.
Yeah.
So they're thinking, well, maybe because it worked there, it'll work in New York City.
Yeah.
So, but that's changing the bureaucracy to the point where you can actually, they're thinking maybe if you work on, but they don't want to do that. They just want to, no.
Yeah. They want to. Well, they want to protect their business, their monopoly, or.
It's more of a fight that has to happen constantly. It's like living documents. You just have to continuously break against that wall.
Yeah.
That's really what you're talking about is a never-ending battle.
Yeah. So.
Keep doing it. Yeah, podium, contest. Yeah, it's great, but it's like these things have to continue. There have to be more of them.
Yeah.
The ethos has to continue. It has to be almost a meme. It's like a virus almost.
Yeah. Anyway, just a thought. Thank you.